Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers, and welcome to another episode of Her Thoughts, a brand new show on Imam Hussein TV, whereby we discuss a range of topics and delve into the lessons that we can implement into our own life. Now, today we're discussing female leadership in Islam. Islam prides itself on female empowerment and female leadership, but the view or the perspective of women in Islam is quite different in the wider world. The Quran itself has numerous examples in the Holy Quran of female leadership, whether it's political, religious, or in any aspect, like the Queen of Sheba, Asiya, Maryam, and other female personalities mentioned in the Holy Quran. But the question is, are we giving women in society that role of leadership? Should women have a role of leadership? Does Islam empowerment, or is it quite the opposite? Inshallah, we'll be having a very good discussion in today's episode. Once again, I'm joined by my co-host, and today we have a special guest joining us in the studio, Dr. Rebecca Masterton. Assalamu alaikum, doctor, and assalamu alaikum to all of you.
Alaikum salam.
So once again, the viewers, we have a very special guest joining us today, which will join us in discussion. So, female leadership in Islam. You know, do we feel? I'll start with Dr. Rebecca. Does Islam give women the role of leadership, or is it quite the opposite? I mean, in the wider society, it's viewed as women. You know, women in Islam are oppressed; they don't have a role of leadership, and Islam does quite the opposite. Is that true? Is that a reality or not?
Well, it gives women leadership roles in ways that are obviously different from men, and that's for many reasons. Some of those are practical. I would also say that some of them are spiritual as well. So there are complementary roles of leadership that are given to men and women, and as we know, the Quran says it's incumbent upon both men and women to seek knowledge. So that means that a woman can be a scholar, a teacher, educator, and obviously speaker. Like, you know, we have many women speakers as well, politicians, people working in politics. So yes, it does. There are obviously certain roles that are reserved for men, like I said, often for practical reasons. And I was also going to argue for like I said, the spiritual reasons, which is that, you know, today we do have a situation in Western countries of an emasculating men, and this is causing the breakup of families. Yeah. So that's another topic or another point that I wanted to make.
Yeah. Very good points mentioned. Anyone else?
I just think that, you know, taking on from what you said, there's no reason why women can't be leaders. Some of our, you know, top alimas we have that we look up to, you know, and we learn so much from in Mahi Muharram, in Mahi Ramadan, and who we've grown up with and who have taught us throughout our generations. And I think it's very important because not only, I think, you know, generations, you know, maybe in our grandparents' generations, we used to only look at men, you know, who went on the minbar and men who used to speak out. And it's only, you know, in the last, say, maybe 20, 30 years or so where women have come out more, and women are speaking out more, and women are learning as well and studying Islam, and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, and now they are not only, you know, lecturing in Islamic centres or in mosques, but also holding, you know, small, now with the whole corona situation, everything is online. But pre-corona, you know, there's lots of small classes and lots of small groups which are held at home by women, groups that I'm also part of, where I go and, you know, we learn about different topics, different fiqh topics, different Islamic history topics. And it's so important because it teaches the children of today's generation, especially our daughters, that not only can we study academically, but also, you know, divulge into the teachings of Islam, because we can do it just as equally as men can.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to have the leadership of women alongside men, and as Rebecca very eloquently said, that, you know, the roles are different, but it doesn't mean that you know, one is better than the other. We have, you know, our own strengths and weaknesses. So recently I was involved in a group with mostly men, and there was less women. But you know, by the end of it, while there was a bit of a struggle to get this whole, you know, what are the women bringing to it, and you know, settling in as in your vibes and what you're bringing to a group. At the end, you know, one of the prominent brothers did say it's been very interesting and eye-opening to have the sisters on board to share their, you know, because we bring a different element and flavour to, you know, group discussions and how we're going to go forward. There may be things that we are better at, you know, with organisation. There's several things. So I think that, you know, we shouldn't eliminate one. And Rebecca, as you were saying, that in this day and age we're going towards the other curve where we are demasculating men, where we shouldn't be, because again they have their strengths, and I think together we work better as you know, as agreeing to our strengths.
And you know, just taking up from what you say, often you have panel discussions where you have men and women together, and that you know, it works very nicely because you can bounce off each other, you bring your own different ideas, and it just shows that men and women we can preach, you know, Islam together, and teach society and teach the children of today's generation that it does work.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been reading articles over the last 10 years or so, not many, but I've just noticed some coming out in newspapers. One that really struck me was written by, it's Western women who have gone down the kind of you can have it all route, and, you know, the career and the family and everything. So what happened was that this woman, she was earning more than her husband, so they had made the decision that he would be at home to raise their daughter and she would go out and earn. And she found that she was basically just an earning machine. So she was missing on all the key steps of her daughter growing up. And by the time the end of a very busy week with long hours, she said she had become alienated from her daughter. So, and she said, you know, everything went on, just, you know, roof repairs and car repair. And she was thinking, is this what I was campaigning for? Is this what my mother told me, you know, we should be fighting for? So there is a kind of, it's kind of interesting when we look at what's happening with Western non-Muslim women, is that there is a kind of a backlash against the 1980s, 1990s move of pushing women into careers, although now they're being forced to, you know, by the economic system. But you know, women who have striven for that are now finding, actually, I do have certain inherent characteristics as a woman. One of them is that I want to be with my children. So so it's interesting to see others like coming through that.
And I think a lot of people actually have discovered that in the lockdown, because I think a lot of families, and I know where we live, it's a very, you know, beautiful, you know, countryside, and you would see people going out on weekends, but now, you know, we've got certain places, peaks on top of, you know, hills, it's gorgeous. You see families now, which I have not seen for a long time, maybe when I was growing up, but I feel like people have gone back to almost the basics in the lockdown to say what matters. Family matters, and your time with your children matter. I mean, we're talking about leadership. You're also leaders in your own home. You know, the nucleus is, you know, begins there, and I think you will impact society. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Rebecca. I think that's been quite it's been an interesting, you know, to watch people's change over the coronavirus.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you all. It's to complement each other, and I think a danger zone is when we try to replace the other. And this is one of the questions that many asked, and many questions that came in, is that sometimes are we taking it too far? For example, there's been occasions where women have led the Salah Jama'ah and other aspects as well. So is there an area where we can take it too far? And in the other side of it, through your experiences, I mean, you're all very active women in the community. Do you feel like there are certain areas where culture or maybe society is holding women back and taking away the right that Islam gave them? So even when we talk about Prophet Muhammad giving women rights, do you feel like sometimes society or culture takes it back from them and holds the woman back?
I think one of the issues that I've noticed is when we do have certain cultures or people taking away some rights, or kind of getting women to conform to certain cultural practices which Islam doesn't really encourage. So, for example, you know, we're here today doing this show, but for example, there might be someone who, you know, their daughter's very eloquent, very, very, you know, well-spoken, very knowledgeable, and they wouldn't let her propagate Islam or be in such a platform. But then I think when these practices are carried out and when we have these issues come up, often people almost throw the baby out with the bathwater and go to the other extreme, and then that's when you get situations where, you know, for example, leading Salatul Jama'ah and things like that.
Yeah.
I think, sorry.
No, I was just going to, pointing on to what you were saying, another thing is, I don't see anything wrong in a woman speaking in front of men, lecturing in front of men, preaching in front of men, if she's in full hijab and she's covered and her tone of her voice is kept to an Islamic level. Because we all know that, say, the Fatima gave lectures, you know, the whole when she was fighting for her rights for Fadak, or say the Zainab, or say the Kulthum. You know, these are all women in our Islamic history who have done them in front of men. So I think nowadays in our culture we have this women will lecture women and men will lecture men. But I think, you know, generation is growing and society is growing so fast that there is nothing wrong in a woman stepping out in front of men and speaking in front of a mixed crowd of men and women, as long as you are dressed and you are sitting in an Islamic way and you are speaking in an Islamic tone.
Yeah, Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, I think also there's now, as you said, there's these different extremes, like women trying to lead the salah, or I mean, another thing that this whole equality thing is very, very tricky, because I mean, I found out actually recently that under English law, I was looking at inheritance law. If so, a woman is, under English law, a woman is considered automatically to be the parent of her child under English law, but a man isn't. Even though he may be the father, he has to either have a contract of marriage with the mother, or there's 2 or 3 other stipulations.
Oh, wow.
What that means is that if the mother died, the child would not automatically go to the father. He has to fulfill 4 or 5 stipulations to prove that he's, not even prove that he's the father, but to comply with certain conditions.
Wow.
Otherwise the child could go to someone else. So I was thinking, here we are in a country that everyone's going on about equality. How is that equality?
That's true.
So
The fathers do get a rough case in this country. I mean, it's horrendous, some of the cases you hear that, you know, it's almost like the woman is seen as a victim and the man is the oppressor. So when it comes to child custody, immediately the favour is towards the women. And I don't know what the courts are like now, but, you know, men do get a rough case, and perhaps that's where the origins are. I don't know, from that law. It sounds a bit...
Yeah, they do, yes. I mean, I was thinking, why is it so... I was so shocked to read it. It's like, you mean the biological father of a child is not automatically considered as the guardian if the mother were
How old was the law? Did you say?
I mean, it's current.
It's still current, because...
No, but as in, when was it first?
When was it made?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not sure, but it does sound familiar, because even in the medical professions, when you need to know the laws when it comes to children giving consent to treatments and things like that, and it's the same thing. The father, like you said, there has to be some kind of... it's not as straightforward, basically. The mother, a lot easier to get consent from.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's quite disturbing. But as you say, I mean, this whole... So so there's that point about equality. It's like, well, actually, is this country really championing equality? And we know it's not in many ways. And then there's a kind of a concept of equality, okay, where men and women kind of start to merge into, you know, again their differences start to disappear, and this, I think, can have like a huge impact on the whole of the society. So if you have the making women masculine and making women more feminine, we can see what's happening with that in, again, like Northern European countries, or even Canada as an example. Many places around the world, like I mentioned, the emasculating of men. this is having an impact on marriage and on satisfaction within marriage as well. We have an extreme case as an example, like in Japan. I mean, people, the men have been so emasculated; they don't have an interest in getting married. So it's like, well, what kind of equality do you want? Do you want it so that, and we do have, I mean, cases in countries as an example, well, some European countries where women look very like men as a style, as a way of dressing. You know, you see a married couple walking down the road, and it's like it looks like two men walking down the road. So this kind of blurring of differences, which is you know, all going out at the moment, like people are really trying to blur the differences now. It actually kind of, it reduces the kind of coming together of families, the staying together of families, and actually, you know, it can result in dissatisfaction, because if you have emasculated men, now a woman is not satisfied with an emasculated man. She may kind of, some women may kind of enjoy controlling the man, but ultimately they're not going to respect a man who they can just push around and who's very passive. So so there's a lot of kind of subtle psychological dynamics involved in here. And if a woman is leading the salah in front of men, the physical aspect, are you seriously expecting the men standing behind the woman not to notice the woman in front of them? And if you are demanding that from the man, what you're demanding is that he suppresses his natural instincts as a man, which is what has happened in Western countries, that the men have been trained to suppress their instincts to the point that now they are, I mean, I see it when I go out here on public transport, how non-Muslim Western men talk. I'm thinking, I mean, you don't sound like you're a man talking, I'm sorry. So, and I don't know if this is leading to a healthy society.
Yeah. That's the thing, is when I gave birth to my daughter a year or so ago, my friend who lives in a Scandinavian country also gave birth around the same time. So I was entitled to a year maternity leave in the UK. And then she said, no, in our country, in Scandinavia, one of the Scandinavian countries, she's like, a woman is only entitled to 6 months, and then the husband is entitled to 6 months. Right. And I said, what if you want to take a year and your husband doesn't want to take 6 months? She goes, no, then we both lose it. And I'm thinking, we're the ones that gave birth. Yes. You know, we're wet through it biologically. Why should a man get? It doesn't make sense. So you're taking that right away from the woman and you're giving it to the man. But like you said, you know, if equality is not 50-50, because biologically we're different. We're mentally we're different. Emotionally we're different. There's so many differences. So we can't divide equality and leadership and all these aspects 50-50. We have to look at the unique. We have to be equal to, in a sense, look at the rights and give it, but it's not equality, it's not 50-50.
We're equal but not identical.
Yes, exactly. We're equal but not identical, and that blew my mind. So she hadn't even healed properly. I mean, she had a cesarean. She's like, I haven't even physically healed, and I'm expected to go back to work, otherwise we lose that other 6 months. And then her husband stayed at home, and he had to bottle filled, and I'm thinking, we're the one that's breastfeeding, we're the one that are going through all that. So when people describe equality or female empowerment in the sense of 50-50, it just doesn't make sense at all.
And I think it goes back to what Rebecca said. I think in essence we are also burdening ourselves because we want to be seen as equal to a man, but you know, they have their physical strengths and we have other strengths. But for instance, if we're going through that whole I'm going to be the main breadwinner, you know, having a career, and I've raised, obviously we've spoken about this before, that I've raised my children and not out of choice, in terms of being the whole, you know, the career woman and the home, I have sort of, you know, caring for my children. It puts a lot of pressure on you physically, emotionally, everything. And why would you do that? If you're in a marriage, you know, share your duties and, you know, split them. But it's like you said, it's not, you know, there's
but also, you know, just like what you're saying, I also enjoy being at home with my children. I work, I do things outside of work, but also ultimately I know that, look, my children, they need me right now because they're so young as well. You know, you can argue that they need you more than they need their father at this age because they are at that tender age. And so I want to be there to be able to, you know, pick them up from school. I want to be there to be able to do their homework with them and feed them dinner at night and tuck them in at night. You know, these are the things that these are the young years where if you miss out on them at this age, you're not going to get them back. And a child will sense that. You know, where the mother is not present in the home, a child does sense that.
Definitely. Let's go back to female leadership in Islam. And one question that constantly comes up is that why can't women become maraja? If you know, women are intellectually the same as men, why can't? And I know this question has come in before the show as well. So in the sense of women becoming maraja or women leadership in the religious or in the Islamic sphere, let's talk more about that.
Well, again, we have a lot of the duties that a man will carry out. Again, as we said, like leading the salah. I know that we now have women, like we said, in the workplace who are working right up until the point of giving birth. So it's not like women are not capable of working and being pregnant at the same time, but being in leadership positions while they're pregnant. But at the same time, Islam does want to again not put that burden on the mother, and actually it comes down to the child's rights, like you were saying. What about the children's rights? So, I mean, not all women are the same, obviously, but some women are softer and shyer than others. Others have kind of stronger personalities and are able to, get into certain leadership positions. But like I said, some of these duties, like leading the salah, every Jummah salah. I mean, I've spoken to shuyukh who have these duties, leading funerals and other things. Even they're feeling the burden. I know I've spoken to young shuyukh who they've been resident alim and they are exhausted doing that. This is very, very heavy duties in terms of the number of hours, the questions that you get from people, the demands that come from people. So again, maybe potentially, of course, a woman could fulfill that role. But at the same time, there's going to be a deficit somewhere else, undoubtedly. I mean, the number of women that I've met who are working very hard, and a lot of them, again, I mean, I've spoken to quite a few women who've got children, and they say, I don't want to go back to work, but I have to go back to work, like you say, because they're so small. My children are so small. Again, there's the whole picture. It's like, well, yeah, potentially, maybe you could take on that role, but how's that going to impact the rest of the family? How's that going to impact, the rest of the society as well? How's it going to impact, like, the next generation that's growing up as well?
It's funny, though. It's a really interesting conversation, as in these things that come up, that can they lead to prayers? Can they become marriage? But you think, there's certain countries that can't even vote in a woman, as their president. And we've had in the Muslim countries, actually, Benazir Bhutto is a modern day example, and we've got other prime ministers. So it's not all about, it has to be in Islam's sphere. I think, as you were saying, Rebecca, it's women can lead. It's just that, in certain conversations like them being a marriage. I mean, I know in Iran they have very senior ladies. I don't know what levels they go up to, but they go through the whole education set.
The mujtahids,
yes, and they will guide the women that they need to, and that's absolutely amazing, because obviously some issues a woman would understand better for a woman. But I mean, really, we have so much more to concern ourselves with, and I think these kind of issues are just picking at things like, well, what does Islam say? What does Islam say about inheritance? But actually, as we spoke in other episodes, there's no perfect society. We will all, and if in modern era people are not happy with this ruling of Islam, well, you know what?
I think there are also discussions. I would really like to get. I know that there are some female scholars out there and it's been long on my mind to get in touch with them, because some of them, as an example, like in Iran, they are having these discussions about fiqh, and they are very, very learned women. So I would love to kind of have conversations with them, because they are kind of discussing this within Islam.
And they have a right to, right?
Yeah.
So how do they feel? Do they feel like they would like to go, to have more authority, or do you feel they're quite happy?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, what happened as an example with the inheritance law. It's partly there with the understanding that the man is going to inherit more because he's financially responsible for the family. But of course, then the question comes: what happens if he passes away? What happens if she ends up being financially responsible for the family? I'm sure there are stipulations in place for those kinds of circumstances. Those are the kinds of discussions that the more learned women are having, and we can see like that's perfectly acceptable for them to have those discussions there. I mean, they're respected as scholars.
Do keep us updated if you catch up with them, because it'd be interesting. Because they're qualified to have that conversation, aren't they? It's almost like us. I'll say, speak for myself. Ignorance.
Well,
saying,
I don't know about these kind of finer points of the fiqh with regard to these questions. We need to consult more senior.
I mean,
we're
talking about senior female scholars. I have a perfect example just at home. My aunt, my dad's sister, she's got a PhD in biomedics, but she's also a learned scholar. So she lectures all around the world. She knows her fiqh inside out, and she teaches and she does classes from home as well. Now it's all online Zoom, but she has taught hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the world because her fiqh is immaculate. And she's been taught by some of the top Maraja around the world. And she had no problem being taught by a man. And now she's able to part her knowledge to not just women, but she teaches men as well.
Right.
So she's at that level where she can teach another man the fiqh rules of Islam. So she can teach me the rules of, the rules that go for women, but she can also teach the rules for a man as well.
It's excellent.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I completely agree with you all. Like, society will not flourish without the participation of both men and women. And I think it's important to have men in leadership roles, and it's also important to have women in leadership roles, because I'm sure Rebecca has come across many situations as well. There's that many times that, for example, if there's a breakup in marriage, some women may not feel comfortable talking to a male scholar, so they would want to talk to a female scholar. Stuff like the menstrual cycle system, after giving birth, all these very delicate topics. Sometimes it's more comfortable to talk to a female. So when a female knows her jurisprudential rules, when the females know has that knowledge, and it's very important to have a female in leadership roles so that women can feel like they can go to them and speak to them about many of these delicate topics that they may feel, not for hijab reasons or other reasons, not feeling comfortable going to a man.
I think also you asked this question earlier about the roles of women in leadership, and I think while we're focusing on religion, but I think being in a society like the one we're in, it's also important that we know where we have. You mentioned in another episode about going to Downing Street, and you met David Cameron, the then Prime Minister, and we need women in leadership roles that are representing our women, and they look like how you are, prototype, because it's fine to say, oh, this is a Muslim woman, but who's not donning the hijab, so she cannot speak up for us. And I think that we are lacking in that area. I definitely think that we are, that it's a very male dominant area, which is fantastic that they've got where they are, but they need to push women up and not going the other way where we're saying we become female centric. Let's have a balance, because that's what Islam has always promoted, that the balance of the leaders.
I feel I completely agree with what you're saying. No, I've had so many females complain when we have males lecturing about, not that they can't, but about hijab, for example. And I just feel that for a lot of females now, they want to hear it from another female. They don't want to, they want another female to kind of give them their perspective and not constantly hear it from a man. You must do this, you can't do that. And I think the lack of that, again, can often lead to people wanting to do the complete opposite side of the spectrum.
And actually, that's a really amazing point, because I think I've been feeling that myself, because I think men will come up with a very cliche perspective of, well, look at Sayyidah Zainab, but we've discussed this before, and we've said that, Sayyidah Zainab will be only relevant to a lady's life if she's got a connection with that personality. But I think men also have hijab, for instance, on this topic, men also have hijab, so perhaps they need to focus on perfecting their hijab, whereas us women should be helping one another to lift ourselves up, because often as same gender will understand one another better.
Yes,
definitely. Concluding points by Dr. Rebecca before we end up.
Yes, we need more women with a hijab. I mean, I noticed that women in leadership positions, generally in the world, Muslim women in leadership positions tend not to have hijabs. You have to, you're accepted more if you don't have hijab. So we need, you know, women with hijab who are, you know, speaking in all the world.
Definitely.
The fields that they're in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for everyone, and especially our special guest, Dr. Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to the audience that are watching at home, and I hope this episode has just touched the iceberg of the topic today. Definitely, as a conclusion, we do need females in leadership roles, whether it's politically, religiously, and society will not flourish without the participation of both men and women. So inshallah, we do see more women taking up leadership roles. Mashallah, there's many women that have reached a level of ijtihad and many other very high roles in society, and inshallah we can see a continuation of that. Thank you so much for joining in today. Inshallah we will see you soon, I guess. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.